In the land of the free, there are but two workplace taboo subjects. The one, religion, and the other, politics. But on this show, we never shy away from exercising free speech. So join us twice monthly for religion and politics. On this edition of Religion and Politics, we hope to tackle the question, why do people hate God? Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Religion and Politics. Today we ask the question, why is it that people hate God? Why is it that people hate God? Now I'll give you 5 examples of the main line why people hate God. Now, religion is not a law in the United States or just about any other first world country. So as a matter of fact, the Constitution gives you freedom of religion. Not freedom from religion, but freedom of religion. And so in this particular case, we're talking about Christianity. We're not talking about any other religions today. But why do people hate God? Now, here's one of the first ones that you hear. Now, keep in mind, when I counsel couples for years, about 70% of those couples were religious. Now, this is what's funny. Most marriage counseling and most divorces in this country are from people who are of a religious faith. That's either Christianity, Judaism, or whether you're Muslim. So of the 3 major faiths and some of the minor faiths in the United States of America, 80% of divorces come out of those groups. So, why do people hate God? Here's the first one that I've learned over the years. It's because they feel that He hated them first. Okay? So number 1, we're going to go back over all of these. But they feel that God hated on them first. Okay? The second one is because He was absent when they needed Him the most. Okay? So the first one He did something to them. The second one He did something to them. Which leads us to the third one. Because He allows good people to get hurt or die and bad people to prosper and get away with doing negative things. Okay? So it's more like a critique of His judgment. Now, number 4, because He allowed you to be abused or hurt by your family, by some stranger or somebody in your childhood. And the final one, because they think He is a fairy tale, He does not exist. Okay? Now, before we start, let's get into the fairy tale one. Because a lot of people have asked me over the years, how do you know that God exists? And I'm not the person that fights for a God who could put a sun in the galaxy and all this other stuff around. That type of person won't need my help. But I always told them, if you're going to die, you have only about a 50-50 chance of being correct. If you don't believe in God, you only got a 50-50 chance. That way you can take a quarter, you can flip it. 50-50. You got about the same much luck as riding an airplane and making it to the opposite end. Making it to the opposite end. So it's really based upon a 50-50 principle. If you think that there's no God, you get to the other side, you could be right. If you think there is a God, you get to the other side, you could be right. So 50-50 chance. Same chance you have when you get on a commercial airlines and you want to fly to the opposite end, you may not make it. Okay, so you have the same chance. You actually have better chances of there being a God than if you hit the lottery, especially the Mega Millions. So I always tell them, that's up to you to believe. I'm not the person who forces a religion on anybody. I believe in your freedom of choice. Matter of fact, I told him, I said, hey, if your own God will allow you to go to hell, how can I stop you? But let's go to number 1, why people hate God. Remember what I told you a minute ago? I said, because they feel he hated on them first. So he hated them, so they're hating on him back. Now let me give you an example. They think that he hated on them because they were born to parents that did not like them. Okay, so one of the mainline reasons that people hate God in this country is because they feel that their parents did not like them, or either they did not like their parents. And how does that play into people not liking God? Because parents are your first example of real love. Okay? First example of real love. Now, from the Greek, there are 4 loves. So a lot of people talk to me, they think there's only one love. Like, I love her. I love ice cream. I love pickles. I love my dog. I love my car. See, it's not like that. There's only 4 real loves. Because if there's only one, you can't put your girlfriend or your husband in the category of a car. It's just not the same thing. You could change up the car 1,000 times, but that person only once. Now, here we go. From the Greek, there's 4 loves. The first one is eros, or erotic love, or erotikos love. That's a sexual love. So when you first meet somebody, you want to get with them, you're erotic. And then from that, you can grow to philia love, Philia. That's friendship type love, a close connection. And if you were married, you would have storge love, Storge, storge love. And that's where you have children. So you fold children into love, because storge love is how how parents love their child. So that's how your parents can fail you. And the last love is agape love. Agape love is the highest form of love you have. That's the love that man is supposed to have for God, and God gives back to man. So that's the highest love. But parents also fall into agape love. So if your parents did not love you in that house as you feel they're supposed to, and you watch some kind of show like Father Knows Best, or you see some TV show where they had a great family, you think your family should have been that way, then you are really let down. And so when your parents let you down, that's an example of real love. If you're born in an abusive home, if you think you didn't have enough money growing up, if you feel that those people let you down, you don't think there's such thing as God. Because if you look at the entire Bible, or anything written about God, even in the Torah, the most that's written about him is love. When you get a television minister or some minister on the corner, or your friend who thinks they know about God, when they talk to you, they always talk to you from a negative point of view. He's going to destroy you. He's going to lighten you down. He's going to give you some kind of disease. But the most of both of those documents is talking about love. When you think about Jesus, most everything he said was love. If you want to encapsulate him to one thing, it is love. That's it. He didn't come that you have a better riches. He came that you would have love. So, when people don't believe in their own home, there was no love there, it's going to be very hard for them to believe that where Jesus loves you, where God loves you. I don't believe in that. They'll put him in the same category as Santa Claus. And all children believe in Santa Claus when they were kids, and most of them believe in God when they were kids, until they think that he let them down. Let's go to number 2. Because he was absent when you needed him the most, that's when you think he let you down. If a child actually believes in God when they're small, and then they go through a process to where say they were beat up by a gang of people and hurt. Say their mother was raped. Say their father was injured by a crowd of people and he died. Say somebody in their family got a disease. Because they think that he left them when they needed him the most. But this God is not a genie rub lamp God. He's not a genie God. So he can't be there when you want him to and away when you don't. Okay? A lot of things happen because he gave you free will. Free will is things happen. So if somebody wanted to hurt your parents, that's because they had the free will to do that. He can't block that person's free will any more than he can block your free will. Because that wouldn't be free will, that's a robot. Okay? Now, people actually go to war in this country to fight for their freedoms. Nobody wants to live in a country where you're dominated. So he gives you the kind of free will people are willing to fight for. A lot of people are rebellious because they don't want anybody to question their free will. So if God allows you to have free will, you might want to allow him to have free will at the same time. So a lot of people question God because like, why did he do this? Why did he do that? But they don't want to be questioned. So remember, if he allows you to have free will, allow him to have free will right back. So people have gone, like I said, to war to fight for freedom. Any country that lacks freedom for the individual is a country that the government dominates the individual. So any country you go to where it lacks freedom for the individual, then you will find a country where the government dominates that free will. And a lot of countries, including this one, seems like they're moving in that direction. The government will take care of you. As long as you give us a little bit of your rights each time that we can take away. Now, let's go to number 3. Because he allows good people to be hurt and bad people to prosper, which is what I told you about a minute ago. It all has to do with free will. When he gave man free will, he didn't rescind that. You would think it more negative of him if he came to rescind that. I'm taking that back. You don't even know how to act this way. You do this to women or you do this to children, you don't deserve that free will. But he did not take that back. The only person who can take your free will is the government when they lock you away in prison. Okay, so there's no such thing like even the constitution of a country. If you can say the land of the free, when they can come along in a split second and take that free will and lock you up for a traffic ticket. It's not the same type of free will. So one, God gives you free will, and the one, the government can take that free will. So when people say, where was he when I needed him? He was in the same place when you broke the law, when you did wrong, he was in the same place. So when you need him, and whether you don't need him, you can't. He's not that kind of genie rubber lamp God. That's more of a Santa Claus. A lot of kids grow up with Santa Claus, so they think God is that sort of character where he's always going to give you just what you want and never something that you don't need. So let's go to number 4. Because he allowed you to be abused. Now this is one of the worst ones. When I counsel, and I mean for decades, I always found people who had problems with their childhood. As a matter of fact, I never counseled any person that had an adulthood issue. Everybody I counseled has a childhood issue, and that issue molds your life. There's not anybody even watching me right there today when you sit at home and you watch me. Your life has been dominated by what you went through as a child. Whether you had too much money and your parents were never there for you, whether your parents had not enough money and they were always around, whether they abused you, whether they didn't pay attention to you, whether they touched you in a way that should not have been, whether the people in your neighborhood were not good, at the school you went to didn't have enough, if you weren't prepared and you thought, I should have been more educated for a job and now I can't get the career, you are molded, all of us, by what happened in our childhood. And they think because he allowed you to be abused. Your parents have free will. So their free will is why they abuse you. Now, there's a famous thing I used to teach when I used to counsel. And when people ask me, why would their parents do that? Why would people hurt them? And I would say to them, whatever gets pressed down upon you becomes you unless you are willing to forgive. So a lot of people aren't willing to forgive. So if your parents abuse you as a child, you can trust 100% that they will abuse as a child. If your parents molested you as a child, you can trust 100% that they were molested by somebody as a child. See, that stuff goes around. Whatever gets pressed down upon you becomes you unless you are willing to forgive, to let it go. And a lot of people cannot let it go. And so the free will combined with somebody else actually went through, they gave that to you. And a lot of people don't understand why their parents did that. And later on in life, your parents wish they never did that. Once they grow wiser, they wish they had never done those things. People don't set out to have children so they can hurt them. They just don't set out to do that. They want to do their best. And so, like I said, in the long run, they wish they had not done that. And so when you grow up, you say, I'm not going to do that to my children. I used to counsel people a lot of times. They said, that happened to me, so I won't do that to my children. And I would always tell them, you're fooling yourself. That is going to happen. And they would say, why? Why would that happen? It was so horrible to me. I would not do that. Because whatever gets pressed down upon you becomes you unless you're willing to forgive. Now, when your parents did that to you, they did that to you when they were under the maximum dynamic stress that day, that week, that year in life. And so when things negative happen, they come out when people are under stress. Not when everything's great. I always tell people all the time, if your parents just hit the lottery for $2.3 million, you would not get a whooping that day. If your parents had a windfall in life, they would be happy. You would not get a whooping that day. You would not be touched that day. But when your parents are maximum dynamically stressed, they couldn't pay the rent, they couldn't buy the food for you, they couldn't even take care of you, they were stressed in life. And they took that stress out on somebody who was closest to them. Could have been you, could have been somebody else. So when you make yourself a promise that I'm not going to do what my parents did, you make the promise just as your parents did when they were in a happy mood and nothing was wrong. But don't let things go wrong in the real world, in a world that he gives you free will, and that stuff comes out unless you're willing to get rid of it, get it up and out. Now, because the last one, number 5, because they think he is a fairy tale. Remember, you got a 50-50 chance. Take a quarter and flip it. You see? It's not anybody's job to try to force anybody to religion. That's why when they made this country, they gave you the freedom of religion. Because most countries at the time, even before the United States, the country was dominated by the Catholic Church. There's not one country at that particular time that they didn't take the opinion of the Catholic Church. Kings took the opinion of the Catholic Church. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. And so all around the world, the Catholic Church lent its suggestions. And so a lot of countries, including France, when they were liberated, did not want the Catholic Church on their back. And the United States for sure didn't. But they did want people to have religion, but not to be a state-dominated religion. So that's why you have the freedom of religion in this country, not freedom from religion. So they think he's a fairy tale. But people do not think they're a fairy tale when they need help. Anybody who will tell you in public, I don't believe in God, I don't trust that person. Because a lot of people go behind closed doors and get on their knees in their closet when nobody can see them outside, and they start praying. They start praying. In closing, I'm going to tell you a true story that proves that. If you know me by now, you know I served in the military, I served in the cavalry, I was a tanker once, I served in combat in the first Gulf War. If you've never been in combat, it's something you just got to see. It's better off seeing it from CNN or Fox News, but not to be there in person. It's just hell. Now, when the combat period was over, and you had to come back from the Iraq side over to the Saudi Arabian side, the friendly side. So I was separated from my unit, because sometimes units get tasked out to different directions. So they tasked me out in another direction. So when it was time to come back, I was separated from them, but I ran into an engineer battalion. And these engineers had to be at least 140 guys in uniform. And so I'm in uniform too. Now in the military, we all wore one particular camouflage, so you can't tell the difference except for the shoulder patch. Other than that, you wouldn't know. So, when it was time to go, I ran into engineers. I said, are you guys going back? I'd like to get a ride with you. He said, yeah, we're going back in a little bit. We have 14 Black Hawk helicopters coming in to get us. Cool, that works for me. I get a flight back to the Saudi Arabian side, and hopefully I get back to my family and my wife. The war is over. I get back to the States, right? Now, there's a difference in getting where you are and how you can end up there. Now, before the helicopters got there, the engineers had a task. They had to blow up an airport that Saddam Hussein had there. So it was their job to destroy the entire airport, including the runway, the towers, and any stuff that was there. So it was people that were dead all around this place. So I won't go into that. People were dead there. And that was their job, to destroy the airport. So they had rather large bombs, real round bombs, as bigger than this desk right here. And they were on the runway, and it was cord leading to each bomb. And all of the towers, there was C4. They were going to blow this place up. I'd never seen it before. I'm not an engineer, so I wanted to see it. So when they were finished, they backed everybody up 2 miles down the road. Before we backed up, there was this dog there. Somebody, whoever was at that airport, their dog was remaining there. And so we tried to get the dog to come up to us. Hey, come here. He wouldn't come to us. So I guess we spoke English. He didn't understand it. And so when we pulled back everybody 2 miles, that dog was still there. And so they gave it a certain time. And when everybody was clear, they knew it. He had the clacker in his hand. He said, fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole. You do that in the military 3 times to let anybody know that you're about to explode something. And he exploded that main detonator. And when he did, it looked like a nuclear bomb 2 miles away. I mean, it's a sight you had to see it. I mean, the mushroom cloud, the fire, everything. It's like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. And I've just seen combat. And I asked the guy, there was no sound. I couldn't hear the sound. He said, wait for it, wait for it. It took less than 30 seconds. But you could hear the sound and the rush wind is like, boom. And then the sound just kept going past us. And the wind did too. And I was thinking, that dog is dead. Less than a couple of minutes, you could see that dog. He was hauling tail down the road we just left. He had managed to get away, but he was running. It was like, hey, boy, come here. He wouldn't come. He just kept on going. But now, here's where it gets interesting. Those 140 engineers were waiting for helicopters. So they could divide those engineers into 14 helicopters. So since helicopters need a long room, they spread the engineers out. There's a great distance between each one of them, so they can get on helicopters when they land. Looked out in the sky, you can see 14 Black Hawks, and they're snaking their way down to see us. I'm glad I'm going home. Now, before they landed, there was a major officer. His rank was a major, and he was coming our direction. And when he got to me, I was in a group of engineers. He looked at me and said, you're not one of my engineers, are you? I said, no, sir, I'm not. He said, when my helicopter gets here, don't get on my helicopter. Now, there was another guy who was not part of that unit too. He said, you going to do that? I said, no, I'm going home. I'm done with this. I'm going home. I knew one thing. The major kept walking. The one thing I knew, that the people who fly in helicopters, they don't know people on the ground. Same uniform, but they don't know you personally. And he didn't know me personally. So why did he know that I was not an engineer? He's a major officer. Majors they're not even around their soldiers. They're usually at an office somewhere, nowhere near the soldiers. So he would not know me individually. So when the helicopter landed in front of me, and the guy opened the door of the helicopter, he said, are you guys engineers? I said, yes, I am. He said, come on in. And I got on the helicopter with them. So we got on the helicopter. The Black Hawk took up in the sky immediately. We're flying. I was like, I'm going home. We're going to see my family. I'm out of here. I'm done. So we're flying around. And this is important. We're flying around. We hadn't flying 10 minutes in the dark. Now, if you've never been in combat, helicopters in combat don't use flashing lights. That's civilian type thing. So we don't use flashing lights. You do, you're targeting the sky, they'll shoot you down. So we use no lights. Inside a helicopter, there's a red dim light that we can read maps or whatever you have to. So we don't use any lights. So there's 14 helicopters are flying in a convoy in the sky. So they don't know this, maybe still combat. Some people don't know about the war has ended, and they can shoot us down. So we're flying along 10 minutes, and I'm sitting behind the co-pilot. You got to imagine, if there's a pilot here, the co-pilot's there, and that's in the Black Hawk, and they're flying straight ahead. I'm sitting on the floor behind the co-pilot. And I turn around and look, and the captain and the co-pilot, they've got some kind of map out, and they're looking at it, and they're looking confused. See, that didn't look good. That looked good to me. That looked good. And so I'm looking at it, I was like, what's wrong? Now, if you've never been in a helicopter, helicopters are loud, very loud vehicles. It's like taking a vacuum and that you use at home, the loudest vacuum, put that next to your ear and run it. That's how a helicopter sounds inside. You cannot hear. So you always got to have ear protection on, or communication where you can talk to each other. You cannot hear inside a helicopter. It's worse than an airplane. Now, so the co-pilot turns around to me, and he says something to me. It's so loud I can't hear him, so I remove my headpiece. He says, there's kids in the back of the helicopter. There's a bunch of kids who are engineers. They're all young people. Couldn't be any more than 21 years old apiece. He tells me, tell them to get down. We're going to crash. And I said, what? I thought he couldn't have said that. It's so loud in here, I must have misheard him. I'm going to ask him again. I said, what? I'm screaming, what did you say? He was so mad he grabbed my earpiece, he opened it, he said, tell them to get down, we're going to crash. And I thought, I knew it. They don't want me to go home. I thought, as soon as I get back, I'm going to call my wife up and tell her they tried to kill me. Now, I'm so stupid at the time. I was 26 years old at the time during the war, so I'm not thinking. I'm not going to call anybody. I'm going to die tonight right there. We're going to crash. So I look back at those kids. They were very scared. They didn't know what's going on. But the training kicked in. I said, turn your weapons down. Get low to the floor. We're gonna crash. So I'm screaming this out. See, in the military, you turn your weapons down towards the floor in case one of them discharges and fires off. Because in the helicopter, the Black Hawk, the fuel is in the ceiling. There's a tank in the ceiling. You can't see it, but you wouldn't want to fire a round up there accidentally if you hit the ground. Now, they were so scared when I said that. They were mesmerized, but not mesmerized by me. This is where religion comes in combat. Remember saying there is no atheist in the foxhole. One kid jumped up on his knees in the center of that helicopter around all those kids, and he clasped his hands and he started praying. He started praying like he was a kid at the edge of his bed just before he went to bed, and his mother said, go to bed. He was praying like that. Now, who would have the foresight to even think of praying at that moment? Not me. I wasn't as close as I am now, but I was mesmerized myself. I was like, we don't have time for this. But I mean, he's got his hands clasped and he is praying. And they're so mesmerized about him, they're not even thinking about dying. They're not even thinking about dying. But the helicopter is falling and falling. And this is pitch black. So you can't see the ground. Okay? If you've ever been in a helicopter before, and the lights are out, and it's pitch black at night, there's no, the moon has just been covered by the clouds. So you're going to find the ground the hard way. Like I said, they're mesmerized by him. And it's falling and it's falling. And I've seen helicopters crashing before. Very few people make it out. If the crash doesn't kill you, the fuel in the ceiling splashes down, burns the entire craft, kills everybody inside. If you've ever seen a helicopter crash before. So I'm not looking at a positive outcome, you see. But I am thinking, once this helicopter hits the ground, I'm going to open the sliding door, get as many of these kids out as possible. So like I said, it's falling and it's falling. And then finally, it finds the ground. Bam! And I feel myself. I'm still alive. There's no blood. But a Black Hawk has wheels, not skids. It has 3 wheels, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. And he hit so hard that now the back end is pitching up. So the Black Hawk is pitching forward, like it wants to go over. So he saved it from the crash, but now we're in more danger. So the pilot on the side screams at the co-pilot, and they're hitting every button they can very fast. They normally take a slow time to do this, but they're doing as many buttons as possible. He's screaming at them. They're doing everything they can. They shut the engine down. It lets the tail fall, which is already damaged now. And now we're safe. They told us to get out of the helicopter, but do not go far because may still be in a minefield. We're still in a combat zone. They'll come and airlift us out of there in the morning. But all those young kids, they thank the pilot, who was just as young as they were, for saving their life. The next morning, as we're there waiting for a ride back, here comes that major officer again. Out of these 100 and something people, he asked me, he said, didn't I tell you not to get on my helicopters? I said, yes, sir. I wish I never had. But see, he found me. Now, when I got back to the States, United States, and I was able to talk to my mother, I told my mother how this officer said this to me, and how there's no way he would know me, and how officers really don't deal with enlisted soldiers. And she said, that's right, baby. She said, he was like an angel. He was sent there to tell you not to get on that helicopter, and you disobeyed that. Something could happen to you. Now, I'm here today. I'm very glad. But that story in itself, when you say, why did he take my parents? Why did he allow my family member to die? You cannot call when you're going to die and when you're going to live. Even people who die of natural causes, that is not the time they wanted to go. They might want to live another 50 years. So whether you die in an airplane, whether somebody shoots a family member, or whether you die in natural causes, those are not your time. If you died in something like Katrina or hurricane disaster, you can't blame him. That is your time. That day you died, unfortunately, that was your time. That's it. Okay? So there's a book that I have that I wrote years ago for people who have that problem, that why does God hate me? Okay? And why does God hate me explains a lot of what I told you, even more so in that book. You can buy it on Amazon.com. I would recommend it for everybody. Never pushing religion, but a lot of stuff that's there is there for you. Everything you can get out of life just from a secular knowledge. Okay? So I thank you for joining us today. And why do people hate God? They hate him because the people who were responsible for loving them didn't love them in their opinion, true or false. Some people have real hurts. Some of us have imagined hurts. So even though the parents did the best you can have the parents who do the best they can, and the child still turns out to hating them. And thinking that if you had a lot of money, a lot of people who are rich in life, they kill themselves. Just like a lot of people who don't have anything in life kill themselves. But actually people kill themselves more on the higher end because they believe they lost something financial. Somebody at the bottom may not have anything to lose, but both do the same thing. So it can't be because your parents had too much money. It can't be because your parents had no money. It can't be because your parents abused you. It can't be because your parents touched you or molested you. They shouldn't have. Remember, that happened to them first. What you change about it is up to you. Whatever gets pressed down upon you becomes you, unless you're willing to forgive. For Religion and Politics, this is Charles Rivers. I thank you for watching. Have a great day.